Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings here in Mendham. In Mendham? Whatever. Yeah. People. So, another week. And, yes, no, I've done absolutely nothing, accomplished nothing. Thinking. That'll always be my excuse. I'm always thinking about how to crack this nut. This complex nut that is the delusion of the human race. Their God delusion, their singularity delusion, their symbiosis delusions, spiritual delusions, all these delusions of accomplishment, delusions that a gladiator war, a system that kills, forces little kids to go into a gladiator war and die, can somehow produce something wonderful and completely worth it. Worth billions and billions of years. Well, hundreds of millions of years. When you think about it, just an awful lot of years of horror. And so, in thinking about it, global warming came up here and there in just little places in my internet travels. And, it's so obvious to me, the whole simple argument, that you can see all the black stuff in the ground, the coal and the oil, very black, very carbon-like. And, we've dug that out and pumped it out and shot it into the atmosphere. And it's just kind of obvious that we're putting stuff back that was there before. And that's why the Earth, millions of years ago, was a warmer place, is because there was a bunch of that carbon in the air. And it got sunk by the organisms, the millions and billions and trillions and gazillions of them that have lived, absorbed that carbon, and happened to die in such a way where they essentially sunk or fossilized the carbon into the ground. And so it wasn't in the air anymore. That kind of thing. It wasn't in the molecules in the air. And, well, anyway, the whole biosphere's evolution, the whole idea of how it produces the oxygen now, and that it, basically has to produce our daily share of oxygen. It has to keep pumping oxygen into the atmosphere every day, or we die. And, just how this whole system works, and it's all based on this carbon cycle, and we're all just part of the cycle of the, not only the life, but of the dead bits also. Well, that just reminded me of that whole circle of life crap. See, that's the delusion. It's this Lion King, these little fairy stories of, and everybody lived happily ever after. No, they don't live happily ever after. They die horribly over and over and over again, and in just insanely horrible ways. So, there has been a bit of a, whatever, a stir among some people regarding these distinction between the life extinctionists, my group, the one I'm part of, I'd be a member of, that party, versus the somehow if we get rid of humans everything will be okay on Earth group, which like I said, I can't make any sense out of that at all. Like everybody was okay before civilization showed up. It's just such a silly argument. Everything died quite brutally, and yes, you didn't go to nursing homes, and you didn't go to the doctor, and he saved your life, and then you live a little longer. And, they didn't have artificial limbs, and they didn't have artificial other parts. They couldn't repair you and fix you and keep you going. And in some sense, I'm saying that sarcastically, because obviously that's part of what makes our life less enjoyable now, is that we spend a long time disabled and crippled and old and crappy. And that's sort of a downside. But it satisfies our impulse to cling to our existence, to, the fact that we're always, I'm not quite done yet. Like if somebody could walk up to me with a perfect way to kill myself, you know, and I would be a little bit apprehensive because I got some shit to clean up. You know, I'm not quite ready. You know, can you give me a few days, a week? You know, I need a little time. And, you know, that's just sort of an impulse in us to kind of think we're not quite done yet, not quite done yet. You haven't quite done everything enough times quite yet. And some things you haven't done at all. And, you know, if you're going to die in a week, well, maybe you do those things either because they're expensive or they're risky or some other stupid reason, you know, and you would do them if you knew you were going to be dead in a week. You know, the stupid list thing, whatever they call that, bucket list or some other bullshit. Everything humans do is just so tainted and weird and foreign to me. You know, they've turned everything into crap. Sorry, just thinking about it. Just, cringe. I got cringe feelings, a lot of cringe in my life. Triggered with cringe trigger. There's probably a word for that. But anyway, so there's this little bit of an argument or controversy, and of course it gets personal with people. And you know, there's some people who would argue that because I've said the word bitch or I've said skanky cunt or something, therefore I'm not a good feminist and blah blah blah. And that's okay if they think that's what it comes down to. I think it's a hypocritical standard because there's been lots of women, you know, feminists who have, you know, said things like he's a dick or something like that. You know, a bastard or whatever. I mean, clearly this is not, you can't just go based on people's poor use of words, slang and such. You have to go with something more. There has to be a more structure to their lack of sensitivity or their bigotry before you start throwing them in a group, I think. Because regardless of it, even if I am a poor feminist, it doesn't matter in one sense, in the sense that I'm certainly never going to vote against a woman's right to do anything. You know, I'm never going to be for anything that's against most all of the feminist ideals, short of the ones where they want to neuter me and, you know, force me to live in Mongolia or something. You know, except for the worst radical ambitions of feminism, I'm a feminist, so whatever. So go ahead, play your game. Go ahead. I don't know, whatever. And otherwise, you know, yeah, I'll treat women like I treat men, which is pretty poorly, generally speaking. I don't like people. And when they defend things that are, in my opinion, beyond comprehension as any notion of reasonable, in the sense that they like concede they understand what evolution is, they know the concept, and yet they'll sit there and tell me that somehow it's a good idea, it's a good process, and that somehow what humans are doing in slaughtering animals is somehow more brutal or more awful than evolution, which does it, you know, kills them all mostly as children, and does it without any empathy or compassion or anything. You know, it'll boil them alive. It'll blow them off the top of a hill with lava. It'll hurt them in all kinds of nasty ways that humans wouldn't waste their time contriving such brutal ways to kill things. So, you know, I'm not diminishing what humans do. I think it's disgusting. You know, someone could make the argument that it's very pro-extinctionism or pro-anti-natalist to somebody even left a comment like this. And it was a really offensive comment in a sense. You know, arguing that trophy hunting in Africa is good for the cause. Yeah, as a practical matter, preventing animals from breeding is good, but there's nothing good about enjoying causing pain and grief to an individual organism. That's sadistic and insane, and it's beyond defendable. Now, if you could argue that somebody was doing it against their own interest, and that they found it horribly unpleasant and a tediously irritating and obnoxious chore, then that would be an argument for game hunting. Okay, but they're not doing it for some good cause. They're doing it for a cheap thrill, and it's a disgusting thrill. In some sense, you can make all kinds of rational arguments about, oh yeah, well, go ahead and kill the hookers or something, because yes, they're all useless, and if they ever get pregnant, they're going to have a retarded kid, and you can make all kinds of dopey excuses for things, but they're dopey excuses because they're doing the right thing for the wrong reason, and a very wrong reason. It's not just a little bit wrong. I mean, enjoying yourself while you're harassing in some brutally horrible way, some other living thing. There's nothing. You can't. There's nothing. There's no way to reclamate that behavior as anything but worthy of squish. You're worthy. You deserve to get what you're giving, which is a lack of consideration and respect for the dignity and the struggle, the hardship the animal has endured in trying to exist, just like you. And if you're not going to care about it, then why should anybody give a fuck about you, fucker? I mean, that's what you deserve. Animals are dumb. You're smart. I mean, you can't do better than that. So anyway, just an insanely stupid argument. Which is, this entire thing just seems insanely stupid. These people seem to be defending something just completely indefensible, which is some dopey idea that if we go back to pre-human civilization, whether there's human monkeys or no human monkeys, it doesn't really matter. As a practical matter, what have you accomplished in terms of doing anything good? All you've done is take a little bit of life that is able to do something better than squeak and struggle and scream, and taking it out of the picture. The only part that could appreciate just what a horror this all is, have any hope of doing anything to correct it or fix it or mitigate against it, and taking it out of the picture and just left everything to the grinder, to the meat grinder. Just an insanely stupid perspective. So anyway, a lot of this is all premised on some idea that nobody can be convinced of anything anyway, and that's some kind of underlying notion that somehow, yes, you can convince people not to procreate, but you can do that for lots of reasons, right? You can just appeal to their selfish reasons. You can explain to them that all the people with kids are really lying about how great their life is. Go interview the old folks, and they'll explain to you how their kids are pretty much a disappointment, or something like that. They didn't know what they were getting into, especially the ones who watched some of their kids die. Just how bad that was. And get some perspective on what you're getting into, just as some personal fun. That your personal fun may not be all that much fun. So for selfish reasons, you might be able to convince people kids isn't the way to go. You want to have a good life. Keep it simple, stupid. And kids are really complicated. Being responsible for somebody else's conscious welfare, especially when you have your own problems, like say you get cancer when you're 35 years old, and you got 3 kids. That's not a very good position to be in. I don't think you're going to enjoy that. Worrying about what their destiny, what they're going to be left to, the social system. Not too good. So lots of reasons, for selfish reasons, to get people not to have kids. But this bigger picture of the human race, that's the last thing people really want to hear about, is how human beings aren't special and human beings won't be here. I think it's a lot easier to convince them of the rest of the biosphere being replaced by plastic and resin and cement than it is to convince them that we're going to replace humans, you know, with a little statue that says, we were here, we figured out it was insanely stupid, and we left. But anyway, the idea of convincing, I'd argue that both arguments are to convince the human race that their extinction is somehow necessary or appropriate, I think is just as difficult an argument as eliminating all the life on Earth. I think people are certainly more conscious of life having something to do with human life than life having something to do with biological things, tree sloths and all that stuff. I don't think there's too many people who think the universe needs tree sloths as the galaxy swirls, that it needs to have some, you know, animal with, you know, moss growing on its back, with, you know, moths eating the fungus on its back. You know, I really don't think they think that's necessary. You know, organisms that are basically defined by how many microorganisms live inside of them, you know, how many pounds of worms live in them. You know, the biosphere is a disgusting place, and, you know, no person who's adding up the facts correctly or reasonably it can draw this conclusion that, oh yes, life is a marvelous thing, it's totally functional, it's all gain, no pain. I mean, just, oh yeah, well worth the torture, as long as somebody else is doing the suffering, you know, as long as it's not them, as long as they feel immune, you know, then that's how it can look. But it can only look good from an irrational perspective, where you do have some perception that you're somehow immune and that it's not going to happen to you, and you're not going to draw the little short little straws of doom and horror. And you know, and many people are in that position because they get halfway through their life and they're feeling pretty confident because they you know, do okay. They miss some of the bigger disasters. Fiddling with the camera. So anyway, so I guess I should, it's over here, you know, reverse. I should reverse the camera. Yeah, you know, there was somebody who posted this link on my whatever crappy message board, and to this article that's you know, doing an analysis of the human impact on the biosphere on Earth, and they do it by weight, which just seems like a really bogus way to measure you know, the impact on living things, is to do it based on weight, you know, because yes, you could argue that long ago human beings probably drove the woolly mammoth to extinction. You know, all the big mammals that still existed after the Ice Age, the humans probably wiped out. Saber-toothed lions, tigers, and such. And clearly that seems to be the case in places like Australia. You know, there's gigantic, whatever, birds. Yeah, so yes, we tend to wipe out the big things and replace them with our big things, cows and pigs. And so yeah, we've done that, but we've also created lots of environments for rats and mice and other little small mammals to live off of our waste. And so there's lots of those critters that we have created. And the biosphere always rebounds. So if you take the big tuna fish out of the ocean, the system has more food in it, so to speak, and that means there's going to be more of something else. So the system always tends to reach some sort of balance. And unless you asphalt and cement, so the parts where we've created cement and asphalt and all that kind of stuff, yeah, that's pretty anti-rainforest. So that's pretty much a dead zone. So we have killed, you know, the amount of living things by doing that. But the argument that somehow most of the organisms are now living in some sort of human cage is just kind of bullshit. And again, it can only be made if you distort things by looking at it by weight. One cow weighs, what, 1,000 to 2,000 mice. So it's not really a very fair comparison to compare by weight. So they have all these kind of distorted numbers, and they throw in the bacteria and funguses and all kinds of other bullshit that shouldn't be, that doesn't make the analysis any more productive. So it says here, of all the mammals on Earth, 96% are livestock and humans. So that's their contention. But that's only if you go by weight. All right. I mean, obviously, the number of rhinos and elephants, yes, has gone way down. And there aren't too many, they have here chickens. Yeah, there aren't too many wild birds, that weigh 8 pounds. So, yeah, that's right. Because they can't fly if they weigh 8 pounds. So it's just it's a pretty crappy analysis. Fairly useless. But it does, there's little things in it, like the amount that there's so much more life on the land than there is in the fish. There's, the fish don't make up a very large percentage. There are lots of worms and stuff, which is disgusting. But anyway, but again, just doing this mass comparison between humans and worms and spiders, it seems preposterously unfair to go by body weight to count the effect on living organisms. Because yes, quite obviously, if you go by body weight, we weigh tens of thousands of spiders, per human. And so that analysis is very distorted. So I can contribute as little as $1 to support more garbage junk science. Oh, great. Yeah. I don't think I'll do that. But anyway, so I did read it. I did go to the actual paper, and this isn't any, they call this groundbreaking assessment. Now, it's not really groundbreaking. They just compiled a bunch of other data from other people and drew a bunch of assumptions and conclusions. There's no groundbreaking analysis involved. Just really isn't. So who knows what the margin of error is in how the calculations are made anyway. So anyway, there's no point in this conversation do I want to imply that I have any, that I think it's okay to raise animals for food. Completely no, I don't think it's okay to do that. I don't think it's okay to create living things and treat them poorly and for exploitation. I don't think it's okay to use them as laboratory experimental devices in laboratories. I think it's obviously far worse to inject cancer into organisms on purpose and all the horrible things they do to very sentient rodents. Rodents are very underappreciated as an example of sentient life. I mean, they're if you've ever tried to catch them in some kind of humane way, they're very smart little critters, and they're just totally underappreciated as players in this game of being a feeling creature, attempting to find comfort and love and all that kind of stuff. And for us to deliberately impose such horror on those organisms is just indefensible crime against fairness and decency and all of that crap. It's wrong, crime, bad, very bad. Yeah. So anyway, so all this talk, I just don't want to, just because I'm emphasizing how nature is worse, doesn't mean I'm trying to say this stuff is okay. So I'm not saying any of that is okay. The human torture of food animals are, especially the ones that are used for medical purposes, which are tortured in very, very brutal ways. Much worse than the food industry. It's just, but nature is worse. Nature grinds them up. Just, you can't really come up with a way of killing animals that could be worse than the way nature kills them. Certainly we have. The food industry has come up with ways to relatively gracefully or smoothly or expediently end the life of many food animals. Nature isn't going to do that. Nature's going to pull their feathers out, feather by feather. It's going to force them to walk every little step of their death. Their death will not be, quick in most cases. It'll be slow and unpleasant and horrible. And that's just the truth. And it kills most of them quickly, and most of them young, and most of them brutally, where the food industry really doesn't do that. So it's just the truth. So these people want to defend nature. It's just statistically indefensible. Just the rodents as an example. The attrition rate is probably 15 to 1. So for every one that gets to maturation, 15 are killed before they get to have sex. They're killed as little virgins. And then you get into the non-mammals, like there's, I've used the example of sea turtles. 10,000. And that's a low average. The number of eggs a mature turtle will lay. And the replacement is just 2. And so 2 out of 10,000 get to maturity. 10,000 killed at some step before maturity. And again, that step is going to be having their little arms bitten off. And they'll be, by sharks. And they'll be sitting there, no little arms. Terrible, horrible ways of getting killed. The diseases and just horrible, awful. No mercy, no drugs, no stun gun to the head thing, none of that crap. Just a really nasty, Mengele-esque torture to death. Well, anyway, so so that's that's why I can't have any respect for people who can think nature is charming, or nature knows what it's doing, or has some underlying principle that's redeeming. And you get this crap. I heard a little bit of a Puro room, and he was talking to Bark Lord and that lunatic Skyzer, and they're just so full of this kumbaya symbiotic nonsense bullshit that most of nature is loving each other and taking care of each other, and they're all giving each other a hand, and it's just such a crock of shit. Most of what nature's doing is runaway infections and smallpox, and it's worms and maggots, and it's parasitical and completely exploitionist. And that's its real character. And it's only through some bizarre circumstances over long periods of time to where that parasitism turns into where the two things start to blend into each other a little bit, and it looks like they're helping each other out but of course they're not. It just looks that way. It's still all exploitation on one side and all exploitation on the other. And this is just religion. This is just a silly story, silly narrative. Let's just make up lies about what's really going on here, what evolution really is, how it really works. It's a lot worse than just the selfish gene. It's the sadistic gene. It's the maniacally power-hungry gene. It's the take over the world gene. It's the no mercy gene. It's the ignorance gene. It's the don't give an inch gene. Shoot 'em first gene. It's a ton of negative things gene. That's the game played in that real world. It's kill your brother before he kills you, and that's the real game played by most organisms. Survival to the nastiest motherfucker, and that's just the truth. Good guys finish dead fast, without kids, so to speak. And again, that's the worst part of it, is the fact that it's all for this purpose of just remaking a new model. Just make a new model of Mengele. Make a new model of whatever tyrant you want to take from history. Whatever, power-hungry, crazy, maniacal force. And that's all this game is really played for, is to keep making these super monsters. And the Tyrannosaurus. I mean, the crocodile is the perfect example of nature at its peak performance. That's what it makes. Just a thing with a lot of teeth, and a hard skin, and a complete lack of give a shit. That's what it makes. And that's what we are, and we just cover it up with a bunch of pretense and bullshit. People just lie, incessantly about their own character, and about the fact that if no one's looking, what they'd get up to, and that they're really, I'll say it for myself. I mean, if it wasn't for my intelligence and the fact that I can know better, I would do a lot worse. And that's just the truth. Because that's my nature. My nature is competitive, and the roads to winning it's just perfectly logical. Shoot first. Yeah, you win. I mean, it's just the truth. But that, again, that's just ignorance. And the one thing that makes us better than this bad game is the fact that we can know better, but people just don't want to know better. So they just keep pushing this bullshit agenda, this pro-life agenda, keep fighting in the game, keep pushing for more Gladiator War. Let's have it on every channel, 24 hours a day. Gladiator War, the best show ever. They're just selling it and selling it and selling it. Because every now and then the producers give them a Coke to drink, and some Pepsi and a hamburger, and so, oh yeah, those are great guys. Yeah, I gotta support the show because I get my little bit out of it. Their little bit of graft, which is their silly delusion that they're doing something important here. And they have some cosmic role to play, and they're going to be all part of the singularity. They're going to be a big brick in the singularity wall of whatever delusional fun. So anyway, so just making these simple arguments, it seems this shouldn't be that difficult to persuade reasonably intelligent people that human beings are not the menace here. That no matter what organism got intelligence, they likely would have stumbled as we have stumbled, in terms of gotten very egocentric, thought it was all about them and not all those other dirty monkey organisms, they certainly would have separated themselves from the rest of the group. You know, we're more outstanding because we're smart. You know, even if it was a Tyrannosaurus, you know, it would sit there and drink its tea with its little pinky out and talk about the, you know, the darkies or something, or the lessers, and play this silly game because that's, you know, the nature of this competitive organism, that he's going to do these kinds of things. We are nepotistic and nationalistic. We're addicted to our associations and our traditions, and we like looking at ourselves in the mirror, so to speak, as something like ourselves. We have a subjective image, and we want to force reality to fit. We want our narrative to be the world's story. And the other organisms would have done the same thing. And the only thing that could save them, like the only thing that can save us, is that the truth can, let's say the truth can, okay, say no. It can, you know, as it's processed, it's going to say, no, don't play with me that way. Don't manipulate the facts that way. That's not what the facts say. The facts aren't about how freaking many, how many calories, you know, how many pounds of fat the organism's carrying. It's about how much brain they have, not how heavy they are. It's about the gray matter, you know, not the white matter. And you know, simple things like that. Don't use distortions and perversions and excuses and bullshit to make this story into a lie. Let's just tell the truth about what life is. That, yeah, it has its little moments of that are fun. Climbing out of the quicksand is fun. It's okay. It feels really good to have the crocodile almost bite your leg off. It feels good to win, to struggle, to fight, to win. And that's a fact. But that good feeling doesn't undo the bad feeling the losers experience as they're getting ripped to pieces and suffocated and glub glub and ouch ouch and horror horror and fear fear. All of that bad stuff happening can't be fixed, you know, with this little, I had a lovely, you know, whatever. It just isn't, you know. It can't get undone. And that's just the truth. And it's not that hard to admit. And then you just deal with the fact that, yeah, okay, I can see how a lot of this is just built out of ego. And it's built out of this, you know, I'm made to be. You know, it's like we're made to be a basketball, or you're made to be a football, or you're made to be a baseball. You're just made to be a tool in this function, and you just have these impulses and this sense of ego and self-importance and challenge. And it's like, yes, nobody likes to be a loser. We have a I don't want to be a beta thing going on in our mentality that says don't be a loser, don't be a failure, don't be a you know, fight. And so we fight it. We fight to live. And we think we're fighting for something that's right, when no, it's just, we're just fighting because we're made to fight. We're not fighting because fighting is a good idea. I think most boxers fight because, well, it's a living and it's a way of you know, setting yourself apart, and it's a contest. But they're not really thinking about, oh yeah, I want to spend my life damaging somebody else. You know, let's see if I can ruin his vision for the rest of his life, or, you know, cause brain damage, you know, so the last 10 years of his life suck. I don't think that's their ambition. And just like we don't have the ambition of torturing each other or torturing children or doing any of those bad things, acknowledge though that that's what this sport does. So let's not create more gladiators. Let's not force more people to play a stupid game. And as stupid as our human game is, the game the animals are playing is really fucking stone cold dead dumb. I mean, you know, the sea turtle game of swim, 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 eat a jellyfish. Swim, 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 eat a jellyfish. Not a great game. No, really not. The winners aren't even doing anything fun. Okay, they're just fighting to survive. And they might have to do it with only 3 fins, it's not a good thing. And you don't vote for it. You don't sentence more. You don't say, let's draft more of them and throw them into this war. That's essentially your power. You're seen as a human being, and you essentially have the power, the vote, to vote for taking a bunch of little kids and putting them in the little brown shirts and shoving them off to war. You feel good about that? I wouldn't feel good about doing that. That's why I vote against it. Yes, because that doesn't make sense to me. I should subject things to this for no good reason whatsoever, for no accomplishment, so you can redundantly eat the 10 billionth and the 100 billionth and the 500 billionth and then the 10 billionth hamburger. You think that's all worth it? You think all the days in the nursing home and all the horrible diseases and all the painful cancers and all the other shit that go on, the tumors popping this out and this happening and that happening, all that shit's worth these stupid little hamburger moments? Come on. Stop the pain. Fuck. Stop wasting it on a cause that just... There's no cause. There's no function. It's all friction and no function. You're just making heat, and you're just tearing shit apart, and the shit has value, and just shouldn't mess with it. It's a bad game. It's a bad game. That's the simplest idea, right? What's so hard to just do? Just metaphor it as a game, and you say, what happens in this game? Shit suffers and dies. So a tiny minority of organisms can get off scot-free. That's a horrible bargain. And fuck you if you think it's worth sentencing anything to it. I mean, really, it's where do you get the authority to think you have the right to make that decision for all of the losers? To force them into a game, like I said, with a sea turtle, where the odds are just shitty. Each little turtle's chances are so bad. 10,000 to 1. He's got to live 10,000 times before he wins. He's got to lose 10,000 bad ways before finally he gets, oh, I got the easy ride this time. Fuck that. Fuck you. It's just too stupid. Shouldn't say fuck you, but whatever. So anyway, probably enough of a video. It all comes down to this evolution argument. If you've looked at it at all, if you studied the subject at all, you get it. It doesn't care. Suffering doesn't matter to the process. It will torture as much as it cares to torture. And it's only through delusions that you can make that go away. I mean, there's organisms that go through metamorphosis, that their body changes dramatically. And there's really no reason to believe that nature cares whether it hurts or not. It doesn't care. So they could actually quite literally feel the horror of having their arm ripped off and put where their leg was, and this, feeling the tearing apart of their systems and their reorganization, and there'd be no rule against it hurting, because nature just couldn't care less, because nature can't understand that it's a bad thing. It can't understand what suffering is as a negative thing. It just understands of its usefulness in creating motivated organisms. Organisms that function in fights with each other better because they have this self-interest, this system that really makes it important to them that they win and the other guy loses, because they feel their feelings. They don't feel what the other guy feels. That's simple. And if we did feel what the other guy feels, then this wouldn't even be an argument anymore. We wouldn't have to argue about that, because then the one sea turtle would feel the other 9,000 pain and realize he's not winning. You know, it's not a good deal. Not even close to a good deal. Alright, so enough of video. I'll try to get more organized, do something more with this technology and all this stuff and blah blah blah, but yeah, there's lots of things, lots of shit going on in my life. And you know, just this getting older thing, so many things, and fuck. It's yeah, it's difficult. Yeah. No, that's I'm just making an excuse, but that's all. Just thought I'd point that out. So anyway, so till next time, I think there's nothing else really to say, right? Let me just make sure. So yeah, I'm not, you know, it's just kind of funny how this brings up different subjects, because all of a sudden all this misogyny argument gets thrown into it and all this other kind of crap, and so it's, you know, I think it's kind of yeah, it's just stupid. It just, you know, it's just some way to somehow pretend that somebody else's opinion isn't valid because of some other problem they have or some other issue they have, and that's never a good way to argue. It's fairly yeah, well, whatever. You know, it's kind of a straw man in a sense. It's a fake argument, because the real argument is the subject, not some other subject, for where you might be right and they might be wrong. But anyway, wasn't incredibly articulate in saying that, but the point is yeah, who needs these distractions? Clearly people just can't make they can't fight the good fight, you know, on the subject. They always have to change the subject to some other subject, and the simple subject is evolution's fundamentally unjustifiable as a game you let children play. Yeah, you know, no reasonable adult parent would have let their kids play evolution, because they're going to get hurt badly, and that's the law of averages, and that's the thing people are supporting. Okay, maybe that's enough. You could always say some other little pile of shit, so I won't say another pile of shit. Yeah, so still hoping to do better, that's all. Just trying to be optimistic. Yes, okay, I'll think of some way to make this more meaningful, to have more of an impact. But it's a hard world to impact, because it's completely distracted by shit and mush and candy, you know, trivial, superficial bullshit, the stuff that doesn't matter. Alright, well, anyway, till next time and such.